Welcome everyone to the Armageddon game between Magnus Carlsen and Wei Yi in round 8 of Norway Chess. A very interesting clash. Wei Yi did beat Magnus in the previous Armageddon game that they played. Now it's time for the next one. Magnus has black pieces, 7 minutes, and draw odds. Wei Yi has 10 minutes. Magnus had a very tough round in against Gukesh in round 6. Wei Yi had a tough one in round 7 against Caruana. So here we are with both players being not in the best frame of mind. Bishop c4 played, not knight f3. This is also sometimes played against players who play the Petrov. And c6 is one of the main moves to hit with d5. And will Magnus go for that? He waits a bit, he's thinking which move to choose. Bishop e7, if you take on e5, I have a check and you lose the knight. So that's not possible. And he takes a bit of time here to gather his thoughts, because generally d5 is considered the main move here. Maybe he's not that well prepped. So castles, and Magnus chooses this very Philidor-ish setup. c3. I like this treatment to go d4 with your pawn when you have strong pawns in the center. Knight bd7. And Wei Yi is now thinking about rook e1. Yeah, that's a good move with the idea of d4. And Magnus can castle here. He can also play b5, which is not such a silly move. Bishop b3, and he's gained some space on the queen side. He goes knight f8. Now, slightly weird because he wants to play bishop e6, trade it, and maybe he wants to also put the knight here. Knight g5 is also possible, but then d5. So it's a little provocation here, you know. Knight f8 is a provocative move. Queen b3 attacking here. Knight e6, d4, queen c7, maintaining the e5 pawn. And now the knight comes to d2. Magnus quickly castles it out. And the position is roundabout even here. Bishop goes back to f1. Rook e8 played. And maybe here bishop f8, g6, bg7, this remaneuvering. a4 played, and Magnus gains back his space on the queen side. Knight comes to c4, looking at the b6 square, looking at d6, looking at e5. This is getting a bit intense here. And actually white is better, so black's move a5 maybe not the best, creating this weakness. And knight b6 played. It was also possible to just take this back. White was slightly better, but knight b6 attacking the rook and also the bishop. Rook b8 played. Magnus maybe not the most happy with his position. Pawn takes pawn. And look at this amazing center. He's also going to pick up this bishop. Bishop d8 to get the knight out from there. Takes. Rook takes. How do you want to continue? d5 would have been nice, but I guess knight jumps here and attacks the queen. e5 also possible. He goes bishop d2 to put pressure on the a5 pawn. And Magnus thinking hard here. Queen b6 played. And queen trade would help black. So Magnus keeps the queens on the board, and d5 pawn push. Knight e4. In fact, it was Wei Yi who kept the queens on the board. The knight jumps to e4. Now you can see black has a nice center, a nice knight on e4. Bishop e3. Okay, taking this pawn looks wrong because of rook b1, queen c3, and queen d1 threatening rook b3. So bishop e7 played, trying to get here to b4. Overall, this position is quite complicated, and I like how Magnus has played. because he does not have the bishop pair, he has the knights, and generally knights prefer closed positions. Rook comes to d8. The idea is to push with c5. He goes queen b1, maybe with the plan of bishop d3, but Magnus very quick to break in the center with c5. Bishop goes to b5. Perhaps you can just play c4, but Magnus takes, knight takes, and now bishop c5 very strong, or you can even take on d4. Magnus takes. You can look at the times on the clock. Wei Yi has 2 minutes 40 seconds, Magnus has 2 minutes 11 seconds, so have to play fast here. Bishop c5, queen comes up to d3, g6 played. It's taking away all back rank issues, but it does weaken some squares here. And queen e3, I love this move because now the rook is looking here. Also there's pressure on d5. Even though the position is assessed as equal by the engines, there's some pressure here for white, and one of them being to play f3 and maybe if possible switch the pieces on the king side. Knight g5, love this move. If you take the knight, the rook is hanging, so knight is coming back to e6. And Wei Yi now taking a lot of time. Magnus having 1 minute 47 seconds, Wei Yi having 1 minute 14 seconds. If you play knight e6, I go rook takes d5, rook takes d5, queen takes d5, and rook c2, attacking f2 and b2. So that seems like a good idea here to go knight e6. But Magnus goes rook c2, and what a big blunder. Oh my goodness, he just blunders and he starts laughing. He blunders big time. Rook takes f2, but look at this. If you take here, he missed that the rook is hanging. That's one of the biggest blunders that I've ever seen Magnus committing. Oh my goodness. Wei Yi just gives up his queen here to get both the rooks. And in this position, Magnus is a piece down. 2 rooks are equivalent to a queen, and Wei Yi has an extra bishop. Queen c7. Rook d1. He takes the pawn. Check. I've never seen Magnus make such a blunder, and then he started laughing there because he could see something like this. Look at him there shaking, because you know Magnus has such high standards for himself that it's very rare to see him blunder an entire piece. Rook d7. Wei Yi is now has to take care of the time on the clock. He has 29 seconds, and although he's winning, but Magnus is just playing very quickly. Bishop c4, putting pressure here. Check. King e2, gives up one pawn. He goes queen h2, and Wei Yi 19 seconds goes rook d6. Oof. Maybe rook f7 was better, but this still winning. He's going to lose these pawns here on g2, h3, but I think what Wei Yi is happy about, that his king is very safe now on a2, and we are on move 45, so Wei Yi will have 1 second increment per move. He has 14 seconds on the clock. Magnus goes king f8, rook takes f7, king e8, and 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, goes rook g6 with 5 seconds on the clock, and resigns there, Magnus, because rook g8 is unstoppable. Whoa, that was a brutal game for Magnus, and you can see that smile still exists on his face, and to just say, like, you know, Magnus has been not himself since that loss to Gukesh, and one can see that today, him blundering an entire piece.